I'll just wait here until you're done.
It's not a very large room.
Yeah, I will, just in case in the back. Yeah. Thank you.
Testing, testing, yeah. All right, thank you, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started with this session. Just to give everybody a quick sense of what's coming. So we have this session back up here. Then we're going to return back to the ballroom for the remainder of our activities. We're going to have a panel back down there with the full student body as well. I'm Dr. Shea Bigsby with the Graduate College. As many of you know, I work closely with students doing a master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation. And so I'm very excited to introduce the speaker for our topic today, which is writing the dissertation, strategies for completing your dissertation. Dr. Marcus Croom is a race-critical researcher whose mission is to cultivate more human fulfillment and mitigate human suffering. A Goldsboro, North Carolina native and proud graduate of North Carolina A&T State University back in 2001, he completed his dissertation research through the Literacy, Language, and Culture program at the University of Illinois at Chicago. He's also the doctoral recipient of the 2018 UIC College of Education Dean's Merit Award and a fellow of the 2016 to 2018 cohort of NCTE's Cultivating New Voices Among Scholars of Color, CNV. Dr. Croom offers his research and experience to support schools, businesses, and communities that are developing racial literacies. And as he indicates here, he's the educational consultant with Brio Educational Consulting. Without further ado, I welcome Dr. Marcus Croom.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be back at my alma mater. I cannot express to you, it is, inexpressible, unspeakable how happy it is to return under these circumstances as a proud alum of A&T. So if you ever in your career get a chance to come back here, you will know exactly how I feel right now. So I'm thrilled to be here. I hope that what we share today helps you to move further and make progress around completing your dissertation work. So to jump right in, because I really did want to get to nuts and bolts kinds of things in this session. We're going to answer questions and ask questions and all that, but I really want you to leave feeling like I know how to get going, all right? So my first question to you is, do you know the format requirements for your dissertation? Raise your hand if you do. Great. I'm not saying that I'm happy that you don't know. I'm saying that means that I'm in the right spot. I'm starting in the right place. Because it's really important that you go into your writing with a sense of how it should be organized and structured. Because it would be really sad for you to do a lot of great writing, of a chapter or multiple chapters, and then you have to go back to that same work all over again, not because it's horrible, not because it's, off base with regard to literature or anything like that, but simply because it's not organized in a way that your committee is going to accept. Right? Now that I know what you do, is this a big issue?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is a big issue. So my recommendation is that you go, and by the way, they already have these slides, so the links are just literally click and go through. Go to the NCAT thesis and dissertation link. It has it right there on the website of our university. This is the first time I'm ever able to say that in my presentation. This is our university. This is crazy. So at our university, they have already provided you a link that shows you a few different examples of templates to use, also timelines, when stuff's supposed to be done, who it needs to go through. At my university, in Illinois, we used I-Authenticate. Do you all use that here as well? I-Authenticate? Something like that, right? where you're going to have to, at the end, submit your entire completed, approved, dissertation committee approved document, so that they can see if it has anything in there that's replicating other people's work, checking for plagiarism, the stuff that you've been doing through Blackboard probably, but they're going to do it another more thorough sense before it's actually prepared to be put into the university library for archiving. So again, just understanding how it's supposed to be organized might take a lot of stress off of you, because you might realize that this really isn't so bad. This is a really long paper, but you've written a bunch of papers to get to this point. Like, this is not your first research paper, right? This is a very difficult one, a very important one. But once you actually see the format and see what they're asking you for in sequence, and see the heading, or at least a potential heading, because you can change it to whatever you need to see that, oh, okay, I've got to be able to, at the end, put a contents page together that literally maps onto whatever page number that heading starts and ends, right? So like, those are things you're not thinking about right now, right? Some of you may not be there yet, but if you can go ahead and start using the template that's actually going to end up being submitted to the library to be placed on archive, that just saves you a lot of time. You're not just writing and revisiting revisions over just formatting stuff, like literally just formatting along. The wording is fine, the data's good, but you got to go back and work a week just to deal with formatting issues if you don't think about it going in. So that's why I'm really stressing, that's the first question you need to ask yourself. How does my dissertation need to be formatted in order for my university, my department, my committee to accept it? Okay? Next question. What will you use to write and save your dissertation? Let's have some examples. Latex, all right. EndNote. You use it to write?
With Word.
Okay, got you. So I'm glad you said that. I don't mean how you're gonna get your references together, your reference managing software, if you use it. Some people may not use it. I'm saying literally your desktop publishing, I'm typing a sentence, I added a period. Like I'm asking that very basic question because you don't think that's important, but it's gonna be important at some point. So what are you gonna use to write, to literally type a sentence, type a heading, copy paste a table? Like, what are you gonna use to do that is my question. You're gonna use Word? Word? Other choices? Because there's a lot of choices. Word is by far not the only way to do this, okay? So what other options are in your mind?
Box, or a university text, we call it UT box. A drive that you can save only through the access of your...
Okay, so sort of like Google Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but basically a university stamped version.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. Which gets me to, is there a laser on this? Okay. Okay. That gets me to Google Docs within the suite of Google Drive. That's how you get access to it. And I don't know, does A&T use Google products here?
Yes.
Students do, not faculty. Okay. So if you're a student and you already have Google products as a part of your university account, you can start playing with Google Docs now if you've not been using it. Okay, and decide if it may be what I want to use to type my dissertation. Well, why in the world would I type my dissertation in Google Docs? That sounds childish and silly, right? Well, no, actually that leads to the next question. How safe is all that work? Anybody ever had a problem with a document in Microsoft Word before? Every single person in this room has had that problem before, right? You ever hit save only to realize that Word didn't save anything? Like, so everybody telling you to hit save didn't save you anything because the program behind the scenes had already crashed. You didn't realize the program had crashed behind the scenes of the CPU until you closed it and opened it and nothing was there. It's just an empty file, right? So if you spend a lot of time in Word publishing, desktop publishing kinds of things, you start to realize these systems are far from perfect. There's a lot of ways that stuff can go wrong in these word publishing and not word publishing, desktop publishing software applications. So that's why you need to start asking yourself, am I going to rely on a manual backup process? Am I going to rely on auto backup process? And what that's different from the saving. I mean, you completed something, you got one copy that's kind of in your work folder, and then you have a completely other one that's in a backup that you never even refer to unless things have gone really wrong. Like you don't ever see it again because that's where you're saving it for the rainy day, right? So are you going to do that manually? Are you going to do it by auto processes? For example, if you're using Microsoft, Macs, they have an auto process for doing backups. Now, let's talk about saving. Back to Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word is supposed to have an auto-save function now, right? This is, telling my age. So when I first started, I remember when you could print through like computer type paper. It had all the holes on the side. Y'all remember that, right? So that's how far I go back with desktop publishing, right? Which is really not that far, but it just sounds like that, okay? So earlier versions, the biggest thing, don't forget to hit save, don't forget to hit save. Well, that feedback got back to Microsoft and they started the autosave kind of a function. How many of you had problems with the autosave function? So it's not so solved and fixed, right? So here's the point. How are you going to get to a point through some decision-making process that you're going to sit down and think about and work out that I know, first of all, I'm going to be using this, or something else to actually write my stuff in. That's what I'm going to use to write. And in that process of using that, I know that I will or won't have to do it manual as a backup. It will be automatic or not. And as I work minute to minute, day to day, week to week, I'm either going to focus on being serious about saving manually, or it's an autosave function that is absolutely reliable and fail-safe. Or not fail-safe, but pretty close. Now, in my case, this is my solution. I'm not suggesting this to you. My case, I found that Google Docs worked because it was going up to the cloud. It was saving minute to second, keystroke to keystroke. Now, formatting-wise, once I moved it out of Google Doc, I had to fix some stuff, but I didn't really care because all I'm doing is small stuff, and I know my stuff is not lost, okay? So I literally, this happened in my, doing my proposal. No, I was doing data collection. So I had just done my proposal. No, that's what it was. So I was preparing for my proposal. My computer completely fell apart. Black screen, that's how bad it was, a black screen. Could not get to do anything else. But I had already saved versions that I could recreate from. So yes, it was a headache. Yes, it scared me to death. But it wasn't as bad as it would have been if I had a black screen and I had only been using Microsoft Word. You get what I'm saying? So these are things that are probably not in your conversations in your classes or maybe with your dissertation advisor, but these are absolutely critical in the day-to-day work of getting this writing done. That's why I'm starting here in this conversation, okay? So comments, questions before we go further. What formatting are you going to do? What are you actually going to use to write and save?
I was going to say I have a comment. So I had something similar happen to you. Similar to happen to you where my laptop crashed last semester. And so I was supposed to be backing up. I never actually got backing up, so I lost other stuff. But since then, so now I use OneDrive, and OneDrive lets you have an extension on, so I use a Mac, on your Mac, so you can save directly to OneDrive. So if it was to crash, everything will already automatically back up in OneDrive. That's another addition.
Thank you. OneDrive, if you all didn't hear him, OneDrive, he's saying there's an extension function that they'll offer that allows you to save it directly from your hardware system into theirs in the cloud. Other suggestions, because there's no one way to do this.
Sometimes when I know I'm going to travel and I may have a lot of time to sit down and travel, maybe like on a bus, decide to travel to a bus.
Right.
and I won't have access to Wi-Fi to get onto my Google Doc. So I just use a USB and just save it on there, and then once I'm done, I just move it all up. Move it all back.
Yeah. And that's a good one because in using Google Docs, you do need to be connected to the internet. It does have a safety feature where if you're working offline, it's supposed to kind of gather all that stuff and push it up. I've never risked it. I've never risked it. If I'm using Google Docs, I'm connected to the internet. I don't walk away from my Wi-Fi or whatever. So thank you for mentioning that. Another workaround, as she's saying, is to use a USB. That way you know where it is, and then once you're back on Wi-Fi, push it all up to the cloud. Other ideas, suggestions, experiences, stories. Okay. So now, as we all know, Aggies do. What that means is just get it done. That's what this means. You prioritize and plan the most important things in your life. I hope you do. This is no different. You got to figure out and set your life up. I didn't say set your personal time or your professional time up. Set your life up to get this done because you said you wanted a PhD. So you got to work out relationship time stuff, children time stuff, church, if you're doing church, mosque, synagogue, you know, whatever. You got to figure your life out, get your life together, and get this done. Okay? That's the first thing Aggies do, so just get it done. Now, in terms of your writing process, this is a book that I'm recommending not because I, relied on it to get through my PhD, but it was one that I came across in a writing class that I took. By the way, a great way to move and make progress in your writing is to do writing in your writing classes. So take a writing class with the full intent of working out dissertation stuff in the writing class. Now you're gonna have to do, whoever's assignments, the professor's assignments related to the writing class, but they should understand that the reason why people are taking a writing class is because they got writing goals in mind at least, or should, okay? So they should be willing to work with you on some level at some part of the course to let you use the writing course to move you forward in your dissertation writing, okay? So again, I didn't heavily rely on this book, but it was when I came across and the times that I've looked at and referred to it, I thought it was really good. I thought it was really helpful information. This is coming from the perspective of a person who's worked with a lot of people who did dissertation writing. And so her experience and expertise is just kind of being distilled in a book form and making it available to you to just kind of think about, well, what are the kind of common hangups or common questions or, dissertation writing is not new. Now, in terms of who's gotten access to what, in terms of educational opportunity experience, it may be new within some communities and within certain social or economic groups. But dissertation writing itself is not a new thing. So there are some things that people can tell you that will kind of set you up for success right from the start. And so this is why I'm recommending this book. This is a person who's done a lot of work with other people who had to do it. Why not learn from whatever she might offer? And it's not by any means the best source. This is just one. Just take a look at it and consider what might be helpful to you as you think about your own process.
Yes, so the book that you're holding up, is that the first?
Yes, that is the citation for this book,
okay.
Right. So this is Joan Bolker, and the title of the book is Writing Your Dissertation in 15 Minutes a Day. So, yeah, just again, a possibility with someone who's gotten some experience, someone who's kind of been there, done that, knows about it. What can I gain from it? And if I can't use it, I'll just toss it, but at least I considered it. And this is not, hard and difficult reading. This is going to be an easy read. You've got enough to read, so I'm not trying to add to your read list, but it's worth considering what some experience, from someone else might add to what you're trying to do. Okay. So the key thing I like about her book, though, and I may just kind of read that section. The key thing I like about her book is that she's focusing on how to write the way that you need to write. Because there's no one way to do it. Okay, yeah, I'll just read it to you. There's no one way to do it. So you got to figure out what works for you and rely on that. Okay? Writing your dissertation will be full of suggestions, this she's referring to the book, for ways to improve your writing process, to make it more efficient and more likely to produce a piece of work that's less likely to kill you in its making, a piece that you'll be proud of. If you already have some strategy that serves you well, it doesn't matter how bizarre it is, you can write in toothpaste or in a closet, and if it produces good writing in a reasonable length of time without harming you, then use it. But be sure to ask yourself if it really works, or if you love it just because you've been using it for 10 years. Use the techniques I described to invent your own strategies. So she's not pushing you to write this way or that way to be a good dissertation writer or a good writer in general. She's pushing you to figure out what works for you and to get clear and serious about what do I need to do to write and to write well. So that's why I thought that was a good possibility for you to consider, okay? So what is your writing process? You've already been writing a lot to get to this point, okay? You gotta now take whatever you've been doing to get you this far and really start to think about what's working, what's not working. Why am I always turning in my papers late? If you are, I don't know, right? Why do I always start the paper just fine and just kind of feel like I'm running out of gas when I get down to the last part of the paper or article or whatever it is? You got to get into your own psychology. People don't realize how psychological writing is. It's not that you can't physically pick up a pen and put it to paper or pencil to paper. It's not that you don't know the keystrokes. It's stuff that's going on in you. There's stuff that's going on in you as a writer that's a problem for getting the work done. Okay? So that's a deeper sense of what we mean about what's your writing process. Okay? And again, that's why I said you got to get your life together. Because sometimes you can't write because something in your life is off. Okay? So you got to get your life together, clear your head and clear your space to be able to get the work done. Because you can't just write from any old kind of place and at any old kind of time. And no, there's something that works for you, there's something that doesn't work. You got to figure that out. Okay? What's your writing plan? That's different from your writing schedule. Your writing plan is, what do I need to read and write by when? And here's another misconception that people think, that writing time is only about writing. No. Depending on what you need, sometimes your writing time counts as writing if you're reading stuff. Hint, hint. You get it? Or you find as you're writing that you have a hole in your knowledge. You're writing, everything's going, and all of a sudden I'm stuck. It may be because you haven't read enough and understand clearly enough to keep moving. So you need to move to reading now. There's a concept or some issue that you're stuck on because it's not clear in you yet, so you can't write it because it's not clear in you yet. Not literally mentally, but in your understanding, it's not clear. So you have to get it clear and then you can write about it, okay? So what do I need to read or what do I need to write and by when? Once you've got a sense of what the plan is, now you got to make a schedule, okay? You can use a calendar, a Gantt chart, device notifications. It doesn't matter. What works for you is the question, okay? So once you know what you got to do and by when, you lay it out. How many of you all know when you want to graduate? Like you know clearly, I want to be done by X amount of date. What is that date? Spring 2021. And I asked you to say it out loud to help you. Because now you feel a little bit more committed to it, don't you? Because you said it out loud in front of everybody. All right? So by spring 2021, what's your name? Nigel? Nigel Pugh is going to be done. Did everybody hear us say that? Now you see the level of commitment that pulled out of you now? All right. So by 2021, Nigel Pugh is going to walk the stage with a PhD in his hand. Okay? He can now backward map it. So by fall, it has to be here. By the previous spring, I have to be here. You all see what I'm doing? So let's take his example. If he wants to walk the stage, at some point, he's got to get his committee to meet. That committee has to approve and sign off on all the documents. It's got to be submitted for the university. He's got to be added to the graduation list. He's got to be cleared financially from the university. All that stuff has to happen. That website link that I took you to in the very beginning, oops, that has that information. So it's probably going to be like March something, right? Where everything has to be in by like March or April something of that, of spring 2021, right? What is it?
Yeah, I think it is like usually March is
Right.
the middle of March. I think is like when you can defend your thesis or dissertation.
Right. So you know in January 2021 what your life is going to be about. You already know that. Right? Because the timelines of the university and your own committee and whatever's going on in their lives, because they're going to have stuff going on. They may retire, a car, I mean, who knows? Like, this is real life for all of us, right? So you got to figure out, okay, backward map it. 2021, I'm done. That means by March this, January that, December this, summer of 2020, I know what I'm focused on. You see where I'm going? So you already know if I don't have my proposal finished by this date, I'm not likely to make it anymore. So it becomes a big deal when you miss a deadline, because you already see this deadline is connected to 5 more that I ain't even got to yet. Right? So now you're starting to take your time a lot more seriously. And you're not messing around and missing meetings with your advisor, because if you miss the meeting that week and your advisor goes on a trip somewhere, it's going to be 6 months for y'all can meet again. You see how you start to get lag in finishing now? So, once you got a plan, you got to schedule it. Lay it out. What has to be done by when? And now you can see who the people that are involved, right? Also, with writing groups, that's a really good way to help yourself and not feel so isolated. We heard earlier today, Dr. Clark was talking about the isolation, right? One way to push against that isolation is to write with groups, okay? And in these groups, if you've never written this way, it's not about chatting and catching up. Like, you kind of walk into a room like this, in my experience, let me say it this way, in my experience. You walk into a room like this, everybody's here to write, you might kind of say, hey, how you doing, like the first 5 minutes, and then everybody sits down and it's crickets. Because we're just here to write. Like, we're not here to chat. We're here to write, okay? If you got a question or, you know, you're trying to connect around some issue you're working out or collaborating on, that's fine. But the focus is to get the writing done, and a way of holding yourself accountable is to meet with other people who also need to write. But everybody's got writing to do. We're not here to chat today, okay? You may need writing coaching if you can afford it, I don't know. But if you can, great. If you can get a grant to pay for you to get a writing coach, or if there's a coach on the faculty here or in one of the support offices and support services, go for it. Take writing classes. Okay? Whatever it is that you need, go get it and move yourself forward. That's the key thing. Okay? Lock in regular time with your advisor. As I said earlier, in a small side conversation, it's on you to get out. It's on you. That doesn't mean your advisor isn't supposed to help. It doesn't mean your advisor doesn't have culpability, responsibility. It doesn't mean any of those things. It means it's on you to get out. Okay? You've got to figure out how to get people to coordinate with you to get you out. Okay? So find a regular way to be in contact with your advisor, because if your advisor does not sign off, you go nowhere. It is literally institutionally set up that nothing happens without the signatures. Like, there's no getting around that. So you need to work closely and regularly with your advisor to make sure that everybody's coordinated and working together to get you through this. Okay? You cannot do this alone. This is a coordinated completion. Okay? And as you do all these careful, well thought out, very ambitious kinds of things, this is your first major research work. This is not your only lifetime achievement. It feels like your only lifetime achievement, right? I get it, but it's not. So you may have to relax on yourself to finish. I'm not saying don't do good work. Do amazing work, right? But understand that once you're done, it is one study. It is one document. It's not everything that you're ever going to do for the rest of your life. So give yourself some grace and say, I will follow up on this in a future study. I will follow up on this point in the form of an article. This is something that I noted in my research. I did not have time to fully analyze it. I now want to go back and do a reanalysis of my originally collected data, and I want to focus on that in an article or in a book chapter or whatever you decide to do with it. Okay? And this is one you probably heard 1,000 times. I hope you have. The best dissertation is? So finish dissertation. That's the best one. There's a joke in the book. Well, you might not read the book. I'm gonna go ahead and give you the joke. Because I was gonna say, I don't want to spoil it, but I mean, this is the reason why I'm saying I think you should check this book out. So the joke was, well, let me just read it. Well, I might not be fun. What do you call the worst, the lowest GPA or worst grade person in a doctoral program like that's coming out of a doctoral program? What do you call them? Doctor. Now that's a pretty low bar. I gotta admit, but it's a funny joke when you think about it. When you think about your medical professionals, and some of them were not very good students, okay, but that's a whole other conversation. My point is, at some point, you've got to give yourself some grace and understand, I need to just finish this process and move forward with my life, okay? Do amazing work, do great work. Don't compromise on scholarly commitments and things of that nature. That's not what I'm saying. But, as we have all heard, the best dissertation is a what? It's a finished dissertation, okay? So as we wrap up, this is just an example, one example of a Gantt chart. You've probably seen this and just didn't know what it was called. So as you see here, they have along this axis the particular item in that row. And then in the columns here, you have timelines that are just kind of laying out what's available to work with, and you just color it in. So this is a multiple week, really multiple month project, right? From July the 14th to August 4th, okay? Whereas this is just for the July 14th period. You see what I'm saying? And in here, this is a pretty long process, so you can go into this visually and just expect that this is gonna be a big chunk of time to get this part of the job done, right? So this is a visual way for you to kind of start to size up your work and the time you have to work within. This is a great way to do backward mapping because you can put, what's the date again? Spring. You see how much more confident he said at that time? He's feeling it. Spring 2021 right here, and he can back it up as far as he needs to get to whatever he needs to accomplish, right? So that's just one possible way to organize it. This is by no means the only way to do it, but that's just a possibility for you, okay? So I want to wrap up by kind of getting into some bigger organizational issues. We tend in writing to talk about word level and sentence level kinds of things. Sometimes we hit paragraph level. very rarely do we hit the kind of whole document ideas level. That's kind of where I want to talk about today, that level of the writing, okay? So how do you represent the knowledge that you've created? So here's a question for you, because I'm coming from the field of social science. Clearly you all are coming from the field of STEM. How does your field expect to see your contribution represented? Words, numbers, tables, charts, combinations of all of those, or something else I didn't mention at all? You got to get clear as a big idea, what is my field expecting my knowledge contribution to look like? And write with that in mind, okay? And something from qualitative approaches to knowledge, Miles and Huberman, they point out that you know what you can show. You know what you can show. Not what you can tell, what you can show. Okay? So my advice to you then in light of this is, show them. Don't just tell them. Now I'm going to show you. I'm not just going to tell you. So this is actually from my dissertation study. As a part of my study, one of the things that I included was interview and conversation. That interview information was represented as a transcript. So I actually took what was dialogue back and forth and represented it in the form of a transcript. And I had particular reasons for why I added stuff like a pause and, kept the ums, etc. There's a reason theoretically in terms of the knowledge that I'm talking about here of why I did that. That's a different conversation. So I showed what I knew in the form of a transcript. What's important here is that she's saying here, to some students, somebody looks like them, they're able to connect with on a different level. What level is she referring to is an important question. Well, she's referring to what I argue is the race layer of teaching and learning, or the race layer of instruction. So in schools and universities as well, you probably heard somebody say, or heard a student say, oh, I can connect with them on a different level, or I need somebody I can connect with on a different level. And they may have been, maybe not, they may have been referring to racially relevant kinds of things, right? So that's what happened in my study. I then showed what I knew. I know that this teacher is thinking about race, or at least the evidence suggests, she's thinking about race as a layer that's different from the instructional stuff. So there's the instructional kind of things that we do in teaching and learning, and then there's this race stuff that's kind of different from that, but it's important, okay? Now that's what my data told me. That's how she's thinking about it. And here are some conceptualizations of race, which is what my study was about. My study was how do teachers evidence their conceptualizations of race? That was my research question. How do teachers evidence their conceptualization of race? And I went in and found that. But this, while this represents clearly what my teacher in my study suggested, when I looked at it and thought about it, actually race and instruction are not two different disconnected things, but they're both important. They're actually interlinked. So you see here, race is a puzzle locked in with instruction, right? That's being mediated by the way people are conceptualizing and making sense of race from a microanalytic perspective all the way up to a macroanalytic perspective. And of course, you've got to consider time from a historical, political perspective of it all, okay? So you're starting to get into my theory work here. But the point is, I was able to show what I knew. You have my entire study in this image. That's my whole study. Now you don't know that because I haven't explained my whole image, but everything that I was able to make sense of in terms of a big picture, it's right there. I showed it to you. And then showed you the transform one that I think really begins to get at theoretically how we should be moving forward and making sense of race conceptualization and practice, okay? The important thing is not whether or not you understand what my study is about. The important thing is I was able to show you the knowledge that I've generated through my work, okay? think about how I can show what I know. Can I show my committee that and then, by the way, the same way we use charts, or if you're thinking about it, notice here, I'm using words in the exact same way you would use a table or a chart or a pie graph, okay, or a set of statistics that you present. I'm representing the knowledge in this form of words. Well, you can do it with numbers as well, or with counts, okay? So the point is, whatever it is that you're saying to your committee, and this is gonna help you get through your defense, whatever you're saying to your committee you know, or that you found, or that you understand, or you claim, you should be able to put your finger on it, literally. Right there. That's how I know that. When you can get to that level of empirical analysis, it's going to make it really easy for you to get through dissertation, because you're not guessing anymore. You're not telling them on faith, just believe me. Or believe me, I told them this and they told me that. No. Where's the transcript? Where's the data? Show it to me. When you can do that, that makes it a lot more convincing that you understand what you did, you got justifications for it, etc. That also helps you with your writing, because now when I'm clear on what exactly is going on, well, how hard is it to write about what's happening here when I can literally just begin to pull up this part of my my data set, and I can see the relationships physically on the page? Well, I can write about those relationships too, because it's clear to me. You get what I'm saying? So it's really good for your committee in terms of getting you out, but it's incredible for you as a scholar to be able to go out in very powerful ways, talk about your work, and write effectively about what you now know. Okay? So, as we wrap up, first thing, you all tell me what we talked about. What did we talk about? I want to hear it. What did we talk about? What else?
Preserve your writing.
Then?
Use your writing process.
Now, is planning and scheduling the same thing?
No.
That's why it's plan and schedule. Those are two different things. Read it, please. Please make sure you include your advisor. Okay? Can't stress that too much. Aggies do? That's right. All right. Show them. Don't just tell them. Please remember that. As a big knowledge idea, show them. It helps you in terms of credibly and empirically making the point, but also helps you with your writing and helps you get through your defense. Questions, comments? So let me ask you a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
In our earlier presentation, I think you were in here, somebody, one of the speakers mentioned boot camp.
Right.
Where you would, can you say what that is?
Yeah, so in those writing boot camps, it's the same sort of thing. They may have like a early morning kind of everybody get together, eat, you know, a reflection moment or a meditation moment, kind of get everybody ready, break from that, and then go write, and then come back together. Let's have lunch. Okay, let's talk about something that you struggled with or whatever. You kind of dialogue and kind of, you know, just work through with other people what's going on with the writing, right? Break from the lunch, write again, right? And then kind of come to the end of the day and say, okay, so our focus today was on this, and we talked about being, you know, showing yourself kindness or grace or whatever it is, you know, that you focused on to try to help you understand yourself, reconnect with yourself, think clearly about yourself as it helps you to move forward in, you know, in your writing. It's structured in any number of ways. You know, it's not one particular way to do a writing boot camp, but that's just one example based on what I've experienced that you may like, you may hate it. You may say, this is too foofy. I just want to sit down and write. I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to write. And that's okay too. That's not wrong. There's nothing wrong with that approach. But if you want to do the other things, that's certainly okay.
Is there a note-taking strategy that you would recommend for dissertation, or just whatever you used to do?
So it's not that I would recommend it. I would say considerations. So, for example, if you print out hard copies and make notes on hard copies, at some point when you want to retrieve that, guess what you got to do? Shuffle through hard copies. Well, if you want to save that, what do you have to do? You got to find a space to put it and keep it dry, or away from fire, or whatever whatever could possibly go wrong, right? So as a consideration, if you take notes in hard copy form, know that you're going to have to physically go find stuff on paper, right? Whereas if you take notes digitally in a searchable form, you may be able to then do a keyword search. So let's say you're going through notes that you took about something, and the key thing is, I know in that note I said something about economics. I said something in that note about economics. If you take it digitally, you can do a keyword search through your notes for the word economics, or economic with a star, or econo, and see what comes up. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just a consideration. It's not right or wrong. Maybe you don't like using computers generally, right? So just consider, if I take notes in a paper format, I've got to go back to paper and find stuff. If I do it digitally in a searchable possible way, then it may make it where I can get access to it again in a way that it's going to be way more complicated, way more time consuming if I don't do it that way. Yeah. I hope that helps. Okay.
So like, what tips would you give for getting started in your writing?
Yeah, I would start with other writing. Here's why. I think when you look at a blank screen, it feels like it's just like so defeating. It's like there's nothing on the screen, I can't put nothing on the screen. It's just like, it's bad. So start with other writing, okay? So you've probably written something, like something in your career of a student related to what it is you want to think about or talk about. Go back to that. You might find that there's 3 or 4 sentences out of everything you wrote. There's 3 or 4 really good sentences that can kind of start you and kind of get you going. Maybe not, but I'm guessing that if you've written on it at some point in your life, you can pull out a paragraph or a few sentences that'll help you to kind of start. And also it helps you to see where you have been in terms of your own intellectual development. Because you can see, I've thought about it like this before. Actually, I don't agree with that anymore. I actually think about it like this now. Right? Or it trips me out. I was thinking about this way back then and didn't even know I was going to get a PhD in this. I mean, I don't know, but those are the kind of things that are part of this process, you know? But I would just go back to other writing that you might already have. And you might find, you might have a whole paper that you use a lot of to move you forward in your dissertation writing. Yeah. You may be smarter in what you're doing now. You may have been smarter at it a long time ago than you do. And you just didn't realize it. So let me get back to my question. Where are you in the dissertation writing process? That's what I didn't know when I created this slide. Where are you? So by way of hands, you've already started. You've already started writing. Okay. You are at proposal stage. You're about to propose or already have proposed what your dissertation is going to be about. Oh, of course, okay. So your first year of the PhD program? Who's in the first year PhD program? Second year? Third year? Okay, so what happens in the second year is my question. What do you all do in the second year? So it's basically about going from doc student to doctoral candidate, basically? Okay.
Well, we're not candidates until we propose.
Until you propose?
Here.
Okay. Okay. So the reason why I asked that is because I didn't know how much this would help you, because some of this is not going to really be like, oh my gosh, that was great, until you get to the point where you really can use it. So please go back to this presentation at some point later in your writing, because you're going to see, oh, I see what he was saying now. I get it.
Wouldn't you think that, like just the title of that book, finishing your,
Yeah, write your dissertation in 15 minutes a day.
I think like once we, even if you've begun some research before we're really at a formal proposal stage, it seems like if I say I took that advice literally, and I might have some preliminary data, I'm doing some research, 15 minutes a day writing and summarizing, even if out of a month, if I did that for a whole month, and there's 10 days out of the month that are actually valuable, would you consider that as a good discipline to do even at this stage right now?
And it would depend on how targeted it is, because, and this is getting back to how writing works. So you gotta at some point get comfortable with doing a whole lot of writing that you actually don't even end up using. At least not right now. You may revisit it later, but it's okay that you wrote 2 or 3 pages, and then when you actually go back, the best part of it is only 2 lines. But you didn't lose anything, right? I mean, it feels like a loss. You didn't lose anything. It's just that you can't use the rest of that stuff right now. You got to use that stuff someplace else, because that's not going to help you move forward in the work you're doing right now. Right? So that's, I guess, to answer your question, that's the thing I want you to think about, is if you choose to go that route, a lot of that writing you may not ever show up in your dissertation because it just wasn't targeted enough. It wasn't clear enough. It wasn't on point enough to move you forward in your writing. But it wasn't a loss, because you did learn something through the writing experience, right? But I'm not at all advocating that you just go around just writing all the time that doesn't turn into something that gets you a signature, right? I don't want you to misunderstand me. But if you want to just kind of get into the practice of writing, and you get comfortable with the fact that this writing is not going to turn into a publication, this writing is not going to turn into a signature of any sort, I just want to write and get better at the craft of writing, go for it. 15 minutes of writing is not bad. You're going to be an amazing writer by the time you're done doing that. But just understand it's not necessarily going to, in other words, at the end, you're not going to take that document and say, here's my dissertation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, it's got to be really focused, really tight.
Regarding the environment in which you did your writing, would you say like maybe a month you worked in this room and then somewhere else, like you shifted your environment as you were writing? Is that something that you did?
I actually wrote a lot in my own house, and when I needed to, in the library or at a coffee shop, or he mentioned on the book. I mean, like that's the thing. When you really start to get into this, you start to realize that there are images, there are suppositions, there's themes that have been attached to writing. And we think about writing in certain ways and in those ways only. When you really start digging into it, you realize it's not even true. It's not even true. So it doesn't even matter where you write. You can write in your house, you can write downstairs, you can write anywhere you want to write. It's not, and that's where it gets back to your process. Like, there's nothing wrong with you saying, I wrote a week at my house, next week I only want to write at the library. Great. Week after that, I want to write at the zoo. Love it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, do you have the tools you need to do the writing and do the work? That's the beautiful thing about higher ed in this regard. So if you can write anywhere, if you can get somebody to pay you and you're writing at the beach, but you're still getting the writing done, hey. Not bad, right? So, I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at. It really, like, we have this image of what it means to be a scholar, what it means to be a writer, what it means to be a PhD earner, right? We have this going on in our heads. It ain't real. And to hit race, because I'm a race scholar, a lot of those images are tied to white folks. And they haven't considered you in promoting those images. So they don't know what it looks like to be a black male scholar. They don't know what it likes to be a black woman scholar and how black men and black women do scholarly in academia and knowledge generation. They don't even know what that looks like. They hadn't created conditions for it to be publicized as much as everybody else supposedly doing it. So I said all that to say it's fine to write any way or any place that you need to write. Maybe you need to write, so this is something I didn't plan to share. I write sometimes in church. Yes, absolutely. So I'm in church service, right? This happens to me all the time. I'm in church service. Something will become clearer in my mind because I'm always, so here's something that I didn't tell you. The term is composing, right? There's a part of writing where you're composing. You just haven't written it down yet.
Right.
That's still writing though. You get it? So I'm composing stuff in my head. I haven't put it down in writing yet, but I'm composing it, I'm organizing it, I'm thinking about it, etc. Right? And then in church sometimes as I'm composing, it clarifies. I take out my phone and put it in my notes right then and save it. And then when I come back at the end of the day, I pull those notes out, copy paste, and I grab it. I couldn't figure out how to say it. I knew what I was saying, but I couldn't figure out how to say it in a clean way, and it occurred to me. I got it. Write it down, stick it in, and I got it done. So my point in saying that personal, very, very personal, probably too much information personal, is that you can write anywhere. You can compose anywhere. It's not locked in, and don't allow people to somehow shame you or say you're wrong or you're not serious. You could be a serious scholar if you don't write in the library only. No, it doesn't work that way. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
For the sake of time, I'm going to have to cut us off because we're going to join, we're going to go back with the rest of the group back in the ballroom. And some of our speakers are going to participate in a panel there so we can continue the discussion. I want to say again, thank you so much to Dr. Croom. Round of applause. And on behalf of the graduate college, we do want to present you with a little gift as well as a certificate. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you. This is the light down here. All right, thank you.
Don't forget the gifts. Oh, she's trying to hold on to it. Save it.
I'm so used to having a pack on.
You got it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Is that good?
Right.
Yeah, no, we had a chance to talk to your mom.
Oh, yeah.
That was awesome.
Okay, what are you talking about?
That's so, I was saying, I started off it's really cool that you
Oh man, they've been like that.
They have we always support and issues, and it's important for not only that parents supporting you guys, but that you guys see they're being successful in their craft.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, she's parents have to be cool.
Yep, it does. And like I said, but it might not all end up in your dissertation.
Like she said,